Okay, cool. So yeah, I'll write some notes about this. So this one will not be auto-released. Okay, let's try another one. Okay. Let's do an NS date, and let's say last week. Actually, let's say right now. And it's going to be an NS date. And I'm just going to use the current date with that date initializer right there. Okay, so in the chat, yes if you think it will be auto-released, no if you think it will not be auto-released. Okay, does someone want to reason me through why this will be auto-released? The answer is yes, by the way.
Because date is a convenience function, like it's going to do it for you.
Rendered at a higher level.
Yep. So a good rule of thumb with these ones on the opposite end, right? If you see alloc init, you are going to, you know, it's being created, it's taking ownership, it's not going to be auto-released. In this particular sense, when we use something like a convenience initializer, it's going to release it itself. The compiler is smart enough to know about it, it will release it. So a good thing is like if you're using NS strings, you're gonna have a lot of like string with format, you know, those types of convenience initializers that are going to take care of them for you. So a good rule of thumb, like Paul talked about the other day, is if the actual class or type, I guess I should say object because it's Objective-C. This exact, you know, object, if it matches up date with a lowercase d, there's a really good indication that it's a convenience function, a convenience initializer, and that will be auto-released. Okay, let's try two more because I do want to get into the project and I feel like that will be fun. Okay, let's do, it's hard to make one on the fly and not give you guys answers for tomorrow. Okay, this is a good one. So I'm gonna have an NS string. What the devil, why can't I type? I'm an NS string and I'm gonna call it app ideas. I'll just say app idea because I don't want to write more than one. And it's going to be an NS string. And I'm going to give it some space. And let's say I have, actually we'll just use this init with string formatter. And then I'll say for my app ideas, I'll have like a spending tracker. Maybe that'll be my app idea, spending tracker. Okay, so in the chat, is this or is this not going to be auto-released?
No.
Perfect. Someone want to bring me back to why this is not going to be auto-released?
Because you yourself are allocating the space and doing something like you created.
Yep. So alloc init is being used here. Now, I'm not trying to trip you guys up here, but let me type it in and see if it'll work. If I use the auto release, I think this will, that should pre-populate. Oh, I just need another bracket, that's why. Now someone tell me, is this going to auto release or is this not going to auto release? I'm not trying to trick you guys, I swear.
No, it is going to be auto-released. He got me with that yesterday.
Yep. So this is the way that when you guys you buy the land, you make the custom initializer that sets up the object. This is the way that you release it. So the compiler is doing this under the hood with this date because it's smart enough to know about that convenience function. But you yourself, when you're making these objects, you know, obviously automatic reference counting is smart enough to know about how to release this. But if you were creating the object with an alloc init, you would use this auto release keyword to free up that space when it's done. Does that make sense to everybody? So I think we did a similar example to this the other day, but at first no, then yes. So if I don't have the auto release inside, it won't. But then when I use that auto release keyword, it will. I think if you guys feel pretty good about this tomorrow, you'll be set. You'll be good. Just keep in mind, alloc init won't automatically release. If it has a convenience initializer, it will. That's a really good rule of thumb. Okay, I'm going to clear this out so it won't yell at us. And then my suggestion for you guys tomorrow is focus your energy on the app, like the actual project that you're going to build tomorrow. I'll talk you through it later today once we're finished up with this project. But focus on building your project first, get it working, get it to a point where you like it. I don't think it'll be a super difficult one for you guys. And then you can come to that separate side assignment. Because getting that one done and kind of rifling through your notes to kind of figure out the answers is going to be a lot easier rather than trying to do it at the start, maybe get them right, and then worry about it. You know, it's like good test takers will do the things that they know are going to be time consuming. If they feel confident in it, they're just going to get it out of the way. And then they'll come back to the things that are more difficult or maybe need a little bit of kind of think through. So that's my suggestion for tomorrow. Work on the project, get it done, get it to a good place, and then come to the memory management portion. You'll see it today. I'll show you it. And you could even start to get working on it tonight if you wanted to. All right, cool. So I'm going to get started on the project. Does everyone have the repo forked and cloned? Okay, we're going to be using the countries API. This is a good one I got from Josh. Josh was throwing together an app several weeks ago. But this is a really fun API to use. It's not hard. It's got a lot of good information in it. And I think it'll be a good use case for you guys to practice what we've learned both this week and last week and use Swift and Objective-C at the same time. So as we go, just like always, ask questions. If you guys hit blockers, if your code's not running, something's not compiling, stop me and let me know because we have plenty of time today. And I'm sure we can get it to a good point. And then I might leave maybe a good third of the chunk unfinished for you guys to finish on your own as kind of a refresher, I would say. All right, so I've posted it in the channel, so you can fork and clone it if you haven't yet. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Insomnia and show you guys the data that we're going to be working with. Because tomorrow when you work with your API, this is going to be probably the best way to go about it as well. Start with the JSON, figure out what the data sets you're working with, and then that way you can kind of think backwards from the data and be like, okay, how do I need to make my model to kind of fit with this information? My network method, what kind of, how am I going to actually turn this JSON into my model object? You'll be able to kind of think through it. So we're going to use this countries API. And I'm going to give you guys the base URL. I think that's just oh, that'll give us the same. That's cool. Okay, I'm going to give you guys the base URL in the chat. Not in the chat, in the channel. Thanks for posting that, Jake. So there's our base URL. And if you trigger this base URL, it's going to pull up all the information about these countries. So if I want information on Afghanistan, I can have a name. We have all like these interesting kind of like alpha and calling codes. But you can probably rifle through and be like, what information would I actually want to display in an app to be useful? And what would I not? And we'll kind of build on that a little bit today as well. Everybody can see my screen, right? Everybody's good? Okay, sweet. So before you guys even get into decoding JSON and trying to fit it into a model object, pay really close attention to the way that it's scaffolded. Because if you're expecting to get dictionaries back, you better make sure that it's actually structured that way in the JSON, right? So a lot of the times what we're working with is probably a large array or a large dictionary, and then there's a bunch of sub dictionaries or subarrays layered inside of it. That's most JSON will tend to be that way. So today we'll practice using that Json serialization. Can anyone tell me, actually we'll see it later today. I'd rather just show you later today because then it will make you appreciate Codable that much more. But unfortunately we can't use Codable with Objective-C, at least not to my knowledge. We're gonna have to use that Json serialization, but it won't be super hard. All right, so let's jump into the project and I'll kind of walk you through what's in there so far. So I just quickly set up a nav controller that's got a table view inside of it. And this is just a basic cell. The cell already has an identifier, country cell. And what we're gonna do, and I'm gonna name this top, I'll just call it our countries. So the cell has the identifier of country cell. And all I really want to start out with is we wanna get a full list of all the countries that come back from the JSON and just populate their name there. And then once we have the name and some information, we'll be able to click on a country and come in and see a lot more detailed information about what's the capital, how many people are living there, what languages do they speak, if it's more than one, an image of the flag, and then the native name. In other words, when you're in that country, what do the natives refer to that name as? Because obviously we've Americanized all the countries that are in this JSON. It's probably an American backend developer that set this up. But the native name would be specific to what the natives call it in that actual country. So that's what we've got set up so far. I think definitely for sure, we want to make sure that we get this populated with the name and the information. And then depending on A, how much time we have, and B, how much review or questions you guys have, I might leave it up to you to kind of figure out the rest of this as kind of a refresher, kind of work through, because this is exactly what you're going to be doing tomorrow. You're going to get a list of items in a table view, click on them, and then have more detailed information pop up after it's been selected. All right, cool. Let us get into it. So referring back to the JSON, I, at first, just want a name. I only want the name. That's all we're going to care about to start with, is we want to make sure our network methods work and we can just pull down a name from the JSON and get it to show up in the table view. Now, I think you guys, a lot of the times, and I've said this many, many times in after hours, but you guys want to tackle a project with just every aspect at the start. And there are some good sides to that, obviously, like time management and doing as much as you can, but better to start small with the little Lego pieces and build up to something big, and then you can continually add on to it. And before you know it, you've fleshed out a really big object, something that's usable. So we're going to start small. We're going to have something just really simple with the name as an object. So just like always, I'm going to have you guys walk me through how we would go about starting to do this. So first things first, we need to make a model object. What do I need to do?
Are we creating this in Objective-C?
Yes, so we're gonna do all Objective-C, but we're going to do the controller in Swift, and we're going to do the detail view controller in Swift. So there will be Swift and Objective-C in this.
Okay.
But the model will be in Objective-C.
I guess start with creating a new file and make it Coco of NS object.
Perfect. Prefix, and then I'm gonna call this country. I've spelled the word country so many times today now that it's looking like it shouldn't be spelled that way. So if I misspell it today, let me know, guys. Okay, go ahead and add it. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and clean up these files really quick. I'll just get rid of the assume non-nulls. Okay, so knowing what we know about the JSON, and I'll pull it back up so you guys can see it here. Knowing what we know about just this particular JSON, right? It looks like we're getting a big array, and it's an array of dictionaries. And I'm assuming that every dictionary is particular to one country name. So we've got an array of dictionaries is what's going on here. So if I want to set up my model object to get the name, just to start really small, what do I need to start with here?
Are you talking about just getting the property?
Yeah, just start with properties.
Yeah, so property, non-atomic, read-only, and then
We'll probably do a copy as well.
sorry, copy. Yeah,
you're
copy.
Good. You're good.
And a string, I think it's a string. Yeah, and name.
Perfect. So we've got our name. And then I do need to configure some sort of initializer.
Init with name.
Yep. So we'll say instance type, and then init with name. And then we're going to pass in a string, which should be name. And let me make sure that I didn't do a dictionary yet. Oops. Let me pull up what I did earlier today just to make sure. Okay. All right. We won't worry about doing a dictionary quite yet. Sorry, I forgot a colon. We won't worry about doing the actual kind of dictionary parsing quite yet, but we will get to that in just a little bit. Whoa, there we go. All right. So that's kind of how we create the scaffolding for our model object here. Now, whenever a model object is created, I do need to actually run that initializer. So how am I going to do that here in the implementation file?
Copy and paste it over and get rid of your colon and do curly braces.
Yep. Okay. And then this is kind of the interesting method call that we do here. But we say if self is equal to super init, open that up. And then we'll say name is equal to name. And you can also do, if you don't include, I think we'll want to include it as a copy, but I can't remember if the property is attributed as a copy, if you still need to or not. We'll do it just because, and we'll see if anything gets messed up here, but I think we should be okay. Okay, so all we did up until this point, you know, if we just imagine that we made a struct for a country, the only thing that we really did here is we just said, whoops, we just said let name be of type string. I guess it would be more of a class for doing an initializer, right? And then we would do our init method of initializing self.name is equal to name. That's all that we've done so far. You guys have done this plenty of times. Okay, cool. So we've created our model object. Remember to build often so that when you do have to run, it'll go quickly for you. We made our model object. I'm just going to put these in a folder so they look cleaned up. Okay, cool. Now, so I've got these in Objective-C, but I want to do the model controller in Swift. So once you decide to do a bridging from one language to the next, there's kind of a step process that we go through. You're going to have to do this tomorrow as well. But does someone want to walk me through how, one, I get the bridging header, but two, just create a Swift file within an Objective-C project? It's not, I'm not trying to trick you guys, I swear.
You have to import the controller in the bridging file.
Yep, we don't have the bridging file yet, but there is a part where it'll just get made for us. That's just kind of like the next step that we have to tackle right now.
Add a new Swift file.
Yeah, new file.
So we don't even have to add a new Swift file. I'll show you an easier way. You just do
Touch. Yeah.
And then instead of doing Objective-C, just click the language to be Swift. It'll still ensure that you have your NS object here so that it can be used in tandem with your NSObject models, but it'll be created a lot in the same way that you guys have made them up until this point. So I'm going to call this country controller. You can call it that, or you can call it API controller.
So do we need a prefix on this one since it's Swift?
Technically not.
Okay.
But you totally can if you want them to. I mean, after a while, it looks so ugly to have so many files have my prefix and then some files not have it. Technically, your Swift files don't need to, but it wouldn't hurt to also have that. It's just, you have to keep in mind that your class is going to be named whatever you name it there. So just keep it congruent with however you'd like to use it. Okay, so as soon as let's say you started this project as a Swift project. As soon as you decide to make an Objective-C project, it's going to pop up with this notification of, hey, do you want a bridging header? And vice versa, right? Like we started this project on Objective-C. I made it for you guys based in Objective-C. And as soon as I decide to do a Swift file in it, this little icon pops up and it's like, hey, do you want a bridging header? And we do want a bridging header. This is the way that we expose Swift files to Objective-C code. And then you'll see here it's got that NSObject modification, which is kind of abnormal from what we've done in Swift. But this just means this is going to be able to work with Objective-C. Okay, cool. Now, right off the top of your head, can you think of what we need in our bridging header if we want to use it in this app? Here's our bridging header. It's just empty right now. Use this file to import your target's public headers that you'd like to expose to Swift.
You need to import your model.
Yep. So basically any file that's in Objective-C that you want to use in a Swift file, we're going to put in here. The thing is that autocomplete is not going to work, probably not work for you. It doesn't work for me. I know it doesn't. So you have to type exactly what it is or else you're going to get some compile errors. So you can see here, I mistyped it on purpose, but if you see my model is called my prefix. It's not country.h, it's mb country.h. And once you build, it should be able to find that file for you. Okay, I'm gonna add my bridging header into my resources file, just so it's out of the way. And then I'm going to put my controller in a model controller folder.
Hey,
Okay.
Mitchell, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I try and move my bridging header like that, the file becomes unfound or error opening.
That's probably what my build error was right there.
Yeah. Yeah, a little fun fact.
Oh, that's weird. That's weird because I did it earlier today. Maybe I put it in the same files. Oh, it might need to stay. It might need to stay at the same level as your project,
Yes.
just like your info.plist is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the only time that I got it to quit doing that is if it was in the same level as my plist, because I've noticed with the new Xcode update and stuff like that, like for some reason I can't like. I don't know if you know how to do that with the new.
I know how to do it with well, actually Hayden knows how to do it. He taught me through it, but I know how to do it with your info.plist, but that's brand new for me that you can't put your country's like bridging header in like a lower scope of a folder. I mean, it's not the end of the world, so we can keep them at the top level, which is fine, but I will figure that out for you guys and let you know. Because if you're like me and you're OCD, I like to have them in certain folders.
Yeah, same.
It doesn't seem like C recursively checks all the folders. So like when you're importing certain libraries, you have to tell it what folder it's in.
Right.
So maybe that's why it's only looking in the highest level.
Probably. Okay. Yeah, I'll figure it out and see what's going on with it, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, cool. So I'm trying to think of the best way to start this out with you guys. Yeah, I do want to do our method. Let's tackle our networking method because this is going to be kind of your paramount thing tomorrow. you're going to have to do a GET request to get a lot of information in a table view, and it's going to be patterned a lot after what we're going to do right now. It'll be something that you'll use a lot with your kind of fetch all requests. So what we're going to
Hey,
do.
Mitch, before we start, I know how to do the bridging, like the header thing.
Oh, you do?
So
Tell
you guys
us.
can move it. Okay, so if you go into your countries and go into build setting and just start typing in like bridge, you'll see it under the Swift compiler - general section.
You might want to click on all.
Yeah, so it should say Objective C bridging header under the Swift compiler. So just type, there we go. And then just change the file path. So if you like put it in resources, you just double click and type like resources in there.
Oh yeah, that's right. So you can just do this.
You can just do that and
then I
change
think
the file path.
Yeah. So then you just do countries.resources. Whoops. That's the exact same way how to do it with the info plist. So thanks,
Yeah.
Alex. So then you should be able to build. Yep, there we go. Cool. And yeah, same thing. I'm pretty sure the same thing for the info. Let's see, info.plist. Oh yeah, it's right here. So same thing. If you want your info plist to be in your resources folder, you're just going to do resources. And then it'll compile. Sweet. Okay. Thanks, Alex. That was awesome. There we go. Everything looks clean and nice. All right. Cool. So let's go ahead and start with our, method. So let's take it way back to our networking sprint. How do I write out a fetch method? Who wants to walk me through it?
I mean, I would, but my internet's kind of shoddy. I'd probably be skipping all over the place.
Oh, sorry, Jake. Well, there's a special word whenever you want to make a function to start with.
Okay, so func.
And let's name it.
Get out to funky town.
Okay. And then I'm not looking to pass in anything. So we really just can call completion right away. We can set up our completion, sorry. Escaping. And then what I'm going to do as well, just to save some space and time, is I know that I'll have to make more than one networking function. So I'm just going to make a completion handler. Because pretty much every function is going to, oh, sorry, that void needs to just be a void. It needs to escape. Pretty much every function is going to have an optional error that it returns that we want to check for, no matter what. So instead of kind of fleshing out the entirety of the parameter every time we write a networking function, we can just say completion handler. We might fix this a little bit later, but we can start with that. Okay, cool. Now, there are a couple of elements that you always need to make a networking function happen. So we need a base URL, and we need a data task. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our base URL. So we'll make a URL from string. And we'll force unwrap it just because if it doesn't work, that'll be a little bit sad. So let's try a couple of endpoints to see if we got what we need here. Sorry, I'm covering that up a little bit for you guys. This is the base URL that I gave you guys. And it looks like, actually I gave you extra. It looks like tacking all onto the end gives you the same information. So just to simplify, we're just going to do this https restcountries.eu/rest/v2. We're going to use that as our base URL. So I gave you guys all on yours. But you can take off the all if you want to, especially because if we're going to do more than one method, we probably don't want to put all onto it. We can append that if we want to, but this is the endpoint for all of the functions that we need. And let me actually pull up the documentation for you guys so that you can see. REST countries. Okay. Cool. So this is the API, and I'll put that in the after hours channel there for you. So this is the API, and here are all the endpoints. You can just click here. So the one that we're using is this all. Turns out that even if you don't have all, it will still work with everything. But you can also file in like a country's information, like the name, and it will pull back specific information on that sole country alone. So if I go to this endpoint now, let's try a different one. Someone give me the name of a country.
Germany.
Cool. So all you had to do was append a path component of name and then add the search term or whatever, you know, if you had a country object with the name already in it, you could pass in the country's specific name. If you think of like index path for selected row, if you tapped on a cell, all the information would go through the segue, send that country along with it, and then you could trigger another network request to pull up information just on Germany, which is kind of the route that we're going to take. But if you just do specific to the country, you're going to get an array of one dictionary, and that one dictionary has information on Germany. So that's kind of what we're going to rely on today. Okay. All right. So there's our base URL. We've got that taken care of. Now we need to make a data task. So does someone want to help me out with how I would go ahead and create this data task? In other words, sort of like a network request.
What are we searching for?
So what we're doing here is we're just going to type in this exact endpoint. And once we request it, we're going to get all this JSON back. So this is what we're trying to get out of our data task right now. Is information, all the information they have on all the countries. So I'll get us started. Let's do a URL session. Sorry. URL session dot shared and a data task with a URL. Oops, sorry, I didn't do the one with the completion handler. Here we go. Data task with URL. And let's go ahead and open this up. Okay, so what's our URL?
Our base URL?
Yep. So base URL. And then right now, I only really care about getting data. I know the response is going to work because we've been using Insomnia, so I don't need to worry about checking for like a 200 or like a 400 error. We don't need to worry about that. But I will check for an error. Okay. All right. So let's do a couple of error handles really quickly just to be sure. So we'll say if there's an error, feels good to type Swift. Okay, so if there's an error, we'll call completion. We've got nil for our data. And then we got our error back. And we'll return out of that. Okay. Oh, maybe it's just nil. Yeah, because it's just dealing with the error. Is this not even the same error? Oh, let's call completion error. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So we've done our initial error handling, that if the data task doesn't work, we've got an error. And we probably should write some sort of NS log here as well. I'm going to skip over those because you guys know and can reference your old code to do that. I want to get into kind of the stuff that is a little bit newer. But just know this is kind of poor error handling here. Okay, now let's check for data. So I'm going to use a guard let here, because if here we're saying if there is the case that there's an error, in here we don't want an if. We want to make sure that there's data. If there isn't data, then we're in trouble, because that's the whole point of the network request. So we'll say guard let data equals data, else we'll also call completion, and I'll just put a nil in for now. Okay, so that's making sure that we have error, data. So just to recap, this is checking if there's an error with the URL session. This is going to check that we actually got data. Okay, and now that we've done a little bit of preemptive work, we can do our do, try, catch. This is where the actual stuff can happen. Do, try, catch. Okay, cool. All right, now is the nitty-gritty part. I mean, for the most part, you guys can copy and paste what we do here a lot of the time. I mean, you'll make a little bit of modifications, but most network methods rely on this kind of same structure until you get to this do part, because no two JSON are the same. Your model object will never be the same in two different projects. So you kind of have to intuitively think through what's going to go on here. Okay, so let's go back to Insomnia and see what we're expecting to get back. Okay, so if I make the network request, I can expect that the most top level thing is an array. And if I scroll down to the very bottom, I can kind of conclude that this is the same closing brace. So this brace matches up with this brace up here. So we've got one big, huge array. And like we saw, when I type in a name in Germany, we're still getting a same array. And then this is all information that is particular to Germany. So I can assume, and right, like it's not great to always assume that you figured the JSON out from the get-go, but I can assume that we've got an array of dictionaries. Several hundred dictionaries, I would say. Okay. So does anyone want to give their best shot of how to go about getting the array, getting dictionaries out of the array, and turning them into our model object? Let's start with the very top. How do I get that top level array?
Guard let array, and then try to do the JSON serialization.
So you're on the right track. We're definitely gonna try to get the array. We're gonna try and get it out of the JSON. But we can't really guard let because we're not really checking that something like has to be there. That's the whole point of the try, is like we're not really sure if we can do what we want to do with it. So instead of doing a guard let, I'm just gonna do a let. So this is just gonna be kind of a place for things to live. So I'm gonna say let JSON array equal a try. And now what we have to do is, normally you guys would say JSON.decode from, and then decode some object out of it, right? We can't do that, unfortunately, because Objective-C objects can't conform to codable. Don't quote me on that, but it would have been 10 times easier to do that. And I tried it and it doesn't work. So I'm pretty sure that Objective-C classes and objects won't allow you to conform to codable. So I hope it makes you appreciate codable more, because it's awesome. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to do what's called Json Serialization. And it has a couple of initializer properties. Sorry, did someone have a question? Everybody good? Okay. So there's a couple of properties you can use. You can get JSON data. You can get an object back. What we want to do is we're hoping to turn JSON into an array. And an array would be an example of a foundation object. So do you guys know when like when you open up a new playground and it says import foundation at the top? So foundation is like the bare bones tools that you need. UIKit is built on foundation. So things like arrays, dictionaries, strings, integers, they all rely on foundation as their kind of protocol, how they rely and how they work. So what we're doing here is we're saying we're taking JSON data and turning it into a foundation object. We could turn it into whatever factors into that foundation protocol. We could turn it into an array. We could turn it into a dictionary if possible. There's a lot we can do with it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do JSON serialization dot JSON object with data. Okay. And now, oh, my mouse. Okay, now we can use our data that we made sure that we had, funnel it in through here. Okay. So we definitely got JSON back, hopefully at this point, right? And now what we're doing is we're turning it into an array. Right now, I'm just going to give it an empty array of options. I'm not really concerned about the way that it's formatted. I just really want to get an array back from those objects. Okay. All right, you guys with me so far? You'll see this kind of magic happen. But right now, all we did is we took this JSON and we made it into a Swift array. It is a Swift compliant array at this point, hopefully. Okay. Next thing, how do I go through all of those dictionaries in the array and turn each dictionary into a country, into our country model object?
I think you'll have to go one level deeper.
We will kind of do them, we kind of will, but you can do it, it's hard to say. It's like right now the level that we're at, let's say that we have an array of countries. Country itself has all these properties inside of it, but we're really just concerned with what the object is. We're not really concerned about each of those properties. So if you look here in the JSON, these are all dictionaries, and the dictionaries all have information in them. We really don't need to actually go a level deeper. We just need to get inside each dictionary and find something. So you're on the right track, CC. It's like really hard to think of this the first couple times that you do it, and then afterwards, it's going to make a ton of sense. So let's go ahead and use a for loop to do it. So we'll say for JSON dictionary in our JSON array, now I'm going to make sure that I have, and we'll fix this error here in a second, but now I'm going to make sure that I have countries. So we'll say guard let country equal some sort of object, some sort of thing that we're going to get out of this array. So right now, it would be hard to kind of go through and make this more malleable to fit our model object. Let's just go back to our model object and make a convenience initializer that will do this for us. Do you guys remember making init with dictionaries? We've done that several times. This is why you're going to do it. So let's go back to our let's start with our .m file, or sorry, our .h file. And let's make another instance method, an initializer. And this one, I want to init with a dictionary. Okay. And you guys will see why we're doing this, and it will just, I hope it will just click. It will just make sense why you're gonna do this. Now let's go into the implementation file. We've made our convenience initializer here that every time it makes a new model object, it's configured the right way. Now let's do one so that every time it gets a dictionary, we can turn that dictionary into a country. So to know about that, you've got to look at the JSON. So the key word, the key value for you to get a name is it has to be spelled exactly the way you see in the JSON with this name. And if you give it the correct key value, you can get that value out of it. Okay? So what we're going to do here is I'm going to declare an NS string, and I'm going to call it name. And the way that we're going to get name is I'm going to take the dictionary that we've passed in, and inside, and CC, you're on the exact right track with this, inside that dictionary, we're going to look for the level called name. If everything goes well, we pass in a dictionary, and then we can funnel this key value to check for a name. Then we can call our init with name. Sorry, we're gonna have to do, we'll have to say return self, self being our object, our MB country object, init with name, and name. So all we did here is we said, okay, we've got a dictionary. Inside the dictionary, make a new property called name every time you go into this name value of the dictionary. So in this particular case on the JSON, it's going to get name and get Afghanistan back, and it's going to make a country with the name Afghanistan. And then we'll go ahead and initialize it, just like that. You guys good so far? Not too overwhelmed yet? Okay, I hope it's clicking. I also have not committed at all, so I'm gonna do that really quickly. I feel bad.
Yeah, you're just so not committed, Mitchell.
I'm always the one hounding you guys about it, and now I feel bad. All right, there we go.
Oh no, the joke was about something entirely different.
Oh, my mind is everywhere but here today sometimes, Josh. I'm sorry. All right. Okay, let's go back into this, and we can get this kind of figured out here. You guys will see how to work it in action, and it will be fun. So normally, when you guys are writing Objective-C code, you can just go into it and say something like country init with dictionary, right? Like that's kind of what we've done up until this point. But we're in Objective-C here. We can't call our Objective-C convenience initializer in Swift. It's just, it's not going to work the same way. The way that we're going to do it is we're going to go into our country. Oops, we got to import it at the top. Actually, no, it's right there. We can go into our country object, and every country object has those particular initializers. So I can go into my init with dictionary. It looks different, but it's the exact same. We called it init with dictionary. This is just what it becomes when it turns into Swift. And now what I can do is pass in JSON dictionary here. And if we were doing a guardlet just to do some error handling, but I want to return if we don't get one back. And then I think we can probably use, I think we'll probably be able to use these fixits. Yeah. Well, the fixes aren't popping up for me, but what we can do is we can just, we'll go ahead and downcast this as, because I know exactly what the JSON is, I feel comfortable doing this. Obviously, if the JSON was to change, you wouldn't want to do it this way. But we're going to downcast our JSON array as an array of dictionaries. So this is our dictionary, right? We've got a string value that matches up with some sort of object, and then it lives inside of an array. Hopefully that wasn't just total nonsense to you guys. Let me open this up a little bit more. Okay. So we should get countries back. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a print statement to make sure. Actually, let's not write a print statement. Let's just write it like we would in regular Swift code. Normally, once we get an object, we're going to want to append it onto an existing array. So at the top level up here, I'm just going to make a var countries. It's going to be an array of prefix country objects. And then I'll just make sure it's empty to start with. And now what I can do is come down here, and every time I make a new country, I can go into our countries array and append that country. Okay, what questions do you guys have about 33 through 36? Is it making sense? No two JSON are the same, so that's why this is so tricky. It's like, you know, you have to do a bit of error handling. You have to kind of monkey with things. I hope it makes you appreciate Codable more. Because with Codable, you don't have to deal with like all of this nonsense and all of this like downcasting our array to be of a specific type. Like Codable is just smart enough to do that for us. Okay, and then I'm gonna do a really crappy catch statement. Like I said, guys, this is not best practice. And then last thing that we'll do is we'll just call completion with, I might just call completion. No, we do have to pass in a parameter. I'll pass in our countries that we got out of it, just so that the message is pretty verbose on what it is. Actually, maybe, oh, it just needs to be an error. Never mind, I'm sorry. Let's just call no. Like I said, guys, you'd probably have several more lines of error handling. That's not kind of the point of today's project. But keep in mind, you know, if you look back into your JSON decoding and you're like, why isn't this working? Check to make sure that you're doing good error handling. I know that this works, but tomorrow when you're working through them, you're going to want to do some error handling to make sure. Okay. So if everything goes well, we should get JSON data back. It should come in the form of an array. We kind of made sure it was in that specific form like this. We just downcasted as it. And then we looped through each dictionary in that long list, that big array, and made a country out of every single dictionary that matched up to our model object. So we passed in a dictionary, and then we said, hey, if it has a name, when we go into the dictionary and look for that key value of name, make it into an object. And that's pretty much it. That's really all we needed to do a fetch method. Okay, let's round out the last part here. I'm gonna say structure networking method. Okay. All right. Now let's go ahead and take care of actually displaying the data in our table view controller. So we can come back to the top level. We'll make a new Cocoa Touch class. And I want you guys to alternate. So model object in Objective-C, controller in Swift, the next view in Objective-C. This is how it's going to be tomorrow. So, oops, sorry. let's do UI table view controller. And I'm going to call this MB countries. And like I said, I cannot spell the word countries anymore today, or I'm going to lose my mind. Okay. Okay, so we've got our countries table view controller. Clean this guy up a little bit. We don't need number of rows in section. We do need cell for row at. And other than prepare for segue, at least for today, we don't need anything else. So just the two basic table view data source methods and prepare for segue are all that you need. And of course, view did load. We're going to make the magic happen in view did load today. I called it country cell in the main storyboard, but let's just go back and double check. And we also need to class these guys. So that is called country cell. We're good there. And then this guy is called MB countries table view controller. Okay. Let's get started on getting our information to pop up. So if you were to this point and you knew that you had made a model object, you had a controller, and now all you needed to do was call the method and then get stuff to pop up in your table view, how would you guys approach this next part? Somebody walk me through what your thought process is.
An interface, create a property for the controller.
Okay. And then country controller doesn't exist, right?
Need to import it.
And import it.
Yep. I think we might have to go into our model controller. Oh no, that should still work. Did you guys get yours to auto-populate?
I think you have to go into the model controller.
That is so interesting. Country control, yeah, that's all it is. That was so weird. I've never seen this. I think this is new to Xcode 11. Because when I was learning Objective-C, this wasn't the case. It didn't do like file path structures like this. Maybe it did. Maybe I was just dumb. Okay, so we've got our country controller. And let's go ahead and throw it in there.
Yeah, at one point, didn't we import the name of the project or something like that with underscores instead of spaces or symbols?
Yep. So this is the biggest point. This is why this isn't working right now. So we can name it correctly, but if we want to expose in the reverse, right? If we want to expose.
Oh, you need the obc in the Swift.
You mean like in the controller file, or what do you mean?
You need that class to have at obc in front of it, so it'll expose itself.
Okay. But there is a couple more things left that we haven't they aren't quite ready for us yet. So if we want to, and I can't remember where in Training Kit it says this. Let me find it in Training Kit for you because I feel like that will be the best thing to show you right now. Let's see here, Objective-C Part 2. Yes, this is it. Part 2, and then we'll go to this Swift and Objective-C in our interoperability. So we've made our bridging header, but it says to use Swift code from Objective-C, you need to import the Swift module header in the Objective-C file where you use Swift code by doing the following. So if we want to take Swift code and use it in Objective-C, we have to do this. So this does the work of sort of translating your Swift code back in time to match up with older Objective-C. And I think tomorrow, a lot of you guys might run into this problem. So just don't forget this, right? If you ever need to use if you ever need to use Swift in an Objective-C file, this is what you have to use. So I just copied this. And now what I'm going to do up at the top, right here, your app name dash Swift. So what are we going to type in here for your app name? Countries. And this
Make that third import superfluous. Yeah, your error went away.
Yep. So if you want to expose any Swift code that you've written into an Objective-C file, you'll just do this. So I need to research how it does it all under the hood, because it's really fascinating how it takes anything that was written in Swift and then kind of magically makes it available to Objective-C for you. But it is really cool, and it's a really easy fix. So if tomorrow you find yourself running into errors where it's like, this Objective-C class isn't working for me, you just probably need to import this file structure, this your app name dash swift.h. And now our errors went away. Okay, so let's do a couple of things first. What do we want to do for number of rows in section?
The controller.countries.count.
Yep, so self.countrycontroller.countries. Okay, and then we've already encountered a problem here, and we'll talk about why and how to fix it here in just a second.
Did you not expose it in the H file?
Yep, so anything that we're going to use here
Oh,
needs to be an Objective-C. So it's a really easy fix. All you have to do is just hit Obj-C in front of it. And I already preemptively know that our function here is going to require the same. And now we got our build. So anything that you need to use written in Swift and later in Objective-C, just make sure that you write a preface of add Objective-C in front of it. And there we're good. So I guess to summarize, if you have Swift code and you want to use it in an Objective-C file, step one, import that specific header file, that kind of like hidden header file. And then step two, in any Swift code that you've written, make sure that you've prefaced anything that you're going to use with that at Objective-C. And tomorrow there's actually like a blurb of code that you can just copy paste that already kind of does this for you, which is pretty nice. Okay, how about for the cell? How would I go ahead and set up the cell?
You'll have to do an index path.row for the country.
Yep, so let's go ahead and declare a country. And that's going to be equal to our self.countrycontroller.countries index path.row. And don't forget your semicolons. And then we'll just go ahead and into the cell. Text label.text is equal to the country's name. And now we've got a problem here now as well, because it's not finding information about our country. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to take a brief break, get up, stretch around, walk around a little bit, and try to think about why we can't access this country. Why don't we have information regarding country right away? So let's break for about 5 minutes while you guys think through that. All right, guys. Did anyone figure out why we haven't been able to get into this name?
Do you need to import it?
Stupidly enough, that's all it is. So when you guys see that forward class declaration thing, it's because the country controller knows about this file. Swift is intuitive to know about this MB country object. But Objective-C is not. Like you guys have noticed, you have to import all of the files that you're going to rely on throughout your project. So because the table view controller has access to the country controller, it knows what that file relies on. So it's a forward class declaration. But if we don't import here, then it's just a forward class object. It's just kind of like, it's like knowing half of someone's address. It's knowing about where somebody lives, but you don't have the exact details. They live in this general area, I have an idea about it. That's why this was kind of able to auto-populate, but it doesn't have specific information about it. So I'm glad today that we got to encounter a couple of these errors because I think you're gonna hit them tomorrow. But I mean, that's a really good one to keep in mind. Okay, we're almost done for kind of the setup part. And then I think after we've got information in the table view, I'll set you guys loose to, because this will be your biggest help tomorrow. Like if you guys can flesh out the rest of this project with all of that country information, you're done. Like you're good. That's all you have to do tomorrow. So let's finish this guy out. How do I call our, because I want to do it in the viewed load. How do I call our network method here? Because like in Swift, we would just say
Do
self.country.
open bracket country controller.
Yep.
And then a space and then the fetch.
Yep. So it's got fetch countries with completion. We'll go ahead and open that up. And this is going to need, oh, that was weird. It didn't give us a closing brace, but it should. Okay. And then this is saying parameter name omitted, meaning that we've in here we have this optional error in our completion handler. But if you remember, Objective-C doesn't do well with optionals. Swift is able to do optionals, unlike Objective-C. So instead of saying this is an optional, it called it a nullable, and then it didn't give it a name. So it was like doing, it was like setting a property equal to an underscore. So what you can do is just call an error. And you can do some error handling here. I would recommend doing it. For the sake of time, we're not going to. But this is probably where you would want to do like an if let error kind of situation. And now, since we're calling a network method and we want it to update UI, there's always a good rule of thumb. Do that on a background queue and bring it back onto the main thread. So we'll do dispatch. And do we want to use this dispatch underscore main? Which one do we want to use, Cece?
I just know it's not that one.
It's dispatch underscore get main queue. This is how we get the main thread. This is how we say dispatch.main.async in Objective-C. And now you can open your block up and make some magic happen here. So what would we potentially want to do here once we've got network information back?
Open bracket self table view space reload data.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna run it. I already know it's not gonna work. Start thinking about why. There's nothing in there. Let's run a breakpoint. See if we can figure out why. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to PO our countries. Oops. Let's do self.countrycontroller.countries.count. Let's see how many we have. Okay, there are none to start with, right? And that's, we expect that, right? We set it to an empty array.
We didn't initialize the country controller.
Yep. So that's the main thing. That's something I know you guys will forget to do tomorrow. Actually, I think tomorrow it's set up, the project wants you to get set up in a shared instance. So, I mean, you'd probably even declare it well before now. It would be a shared controller, but just something to not forget about. Make sure you initialize your objects before you try to use them. Because now if I run it, we can see, hey, even after the method call, it's still nil. Josh is exactly right. We haven't initialized it yet. Do you guys remember how to initialize in a collection file?
Init with coder.
Yep.
Just type in init. Yeah.
Init with coder. And then somebody help me out here.
Do open bracket, given the country controller.
Yeah, we're missing one thing first.
Underscore country controller.
Yep, because we kind of got the placeholder declared here, right?
Yeah.
And now, like you said, Josh, we can go ahead and call country controller alloc init. And that's it. Okay, let's give it a run now. Still no dice. Can anyone think of why?
Is this where I chime in with my view will appear?
We could do view will appear. It should work without it though, but we can call view will appear. I mean, we probably don't want to call the method again because viewDidLoad load should only load one time. And if the data doesn't change, it should stay the exact same way. I'm thinking I want to switch up our network method. That's more than likely what I want to do here. So here's a great time to go into your network method and see if you're actually getting information back. I think we might have just typed something a little bit differently than I did today, but let's go here. And I'm going to write a print statement to print out countries.count. So that when it for loops, we should see this increment every single time. And if we don't see that increment, we know that something's wrong with our network call. What? Why did that just happen? Did everyone see?
I was going to say mine worked.
I put a print statement in and nothing else. Did everyone see that?
Yeah.
I'm not going crazy?
No.
Okay. Well, anyways, print statements should not be what's fixing that. Anyways, so I guess it was working before for whatever reason. Jake, yours was working when we first ran it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, this is good news because, I mean, you can come through here and we've got a list of every country, which is pretty awesome.
Yep, 250 of them.
Yep. So let's do one more thing before I set you guys loose. Let's add one more thing to the model object, just so you can see that it's really not hard to add more to it once you've got your network call working, because that's half the battle, right? So someone pick something from the model object that would be good to display. Or I'm sorry, not the model object, but from the JSON dictionary here.
Capital.
Cool. Yeah, let's do the capital.
I would say
What were you going to say, Alex?
the capital.
Okay, let's do it. So we'll add the capital. How would I do that here in our init method? We've got a couple of things to change.
You need to look at JSON to make sure it's just on the top level of the dictionary. I guess
Yep.
it is.
Yeah, it
'Cause
is.
some of those things are embedded in arrays.
Yeah,
But yeah,
some of them are a
capital-
little bit more down low.
Do you guys use JSON Viewer?
Yeah, I use it if the JSON is huge. Otherwise, I'm just kind of an insomnia guy. But yeah, JSON Viewer is nice because it just puts it all on like separate levels, so you can see it a little bit more clearly.
I like PAW, but it's $50.
Yeah, PAW you have to pay for. It's kind of a bummer. Okay. So let's do this. So we know it's top level, just like the name. So you just gotta tweak a couple of things. So come in the .h file, and you're just gonna make another string property. And this one, let's call capital. And now you know you're gonna have to tweak a couple more things. We wanna add in the capital, an NS string, capital. My spelling is nightmarish today. All right, so we've added the capital in. Now, all I did here was just tweak the initializer and add another property. I'm gonna copy and paste.
Yeah, you have to change it in the M file.
I'm gonna copy and paste it. And then same thing here, I'm just gonna do capital is equal to capital copy. And then really the only ever, it's gonna let you know that we've got an error now because this initializer isn't working the same. But all we have to do is just say NS string capital. On the dictionary level, it's just called capital. Okay, and then we just have to affix our init method here. So our init with name, and then capital. Okay. And then the last thing, I'm gonna go into the table view controller. And I think it's got a right detail. Detail text label.
Yeah, it's just detail.
And then we'll say country.capital. And if
Just
everything goes well, we should see on the right-hand side what the capital is.
Did you have it set as right detail in the IB?
Let's see.
No.
I think it's just a basic. Yeah, there we go. And there we go. I would probably do a subtitle now that I've seen it. It's kind of cool to see that like Antarctica doesn't have a capital. I don't know why I'm surprised by that because there's hardly any people that live there, but it's kind of fun to know. So there's actually a lot of places. Yeah, so it is pretty cool. So yeah, it's really not hard once your networking's working to go back into your model object and just add the rest of the things. Pretty easy stuff. Do you guys feel like you want to try one more thing? Or do you want me to just let you loose and try to flesh out the rest of it? We could try to do like a number if you feel like that would be helpful to do together. Okay.
Yeah, do population.
Yeah, let's do population. I'm going to tweak this in the table view. Let's do, yeah, maybe I won't even display it. Okay, yeah, let's go in and do population. So if we look here, population looks like just an integer. This is a float or a double, right? We can kind of tell by the decimals. But this just looks like an int because it doesn't make sense to have a partial person, right? You can kind of think intuitively through that.
Is the lat long for the capital or for the country? I'm just curious.
That's interesting. Yeah, I wonder if it's just, I would imagine it would be the capital, but because it doesn't make sense to have like a geographic center of a country because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right?
I'll say this API might be pretty fun to play with MapKit with.
Yeah, you could do MapKit with this. You could actually map out all these places without even having to use location services if you really wanted to. It'd be pretty cool. Okay, so let's add a property. And let's do an NS number. Or we could do a primitive if you guys want to. But I think I'm just going to do an NS number. And we'll do population. I'm curious to see if this will even work. And population is going to be an NS number called population. And then same thing, I'm just going to copy and paste. So tomorrow when you guys are doing your objects, this isn't going to be super tricky. Just, you know, take it piece by piece. And then once you've got everything wired up, you'll have that much less work to do. Population is equal to population. And now let's take a look at the JSON again. Same thing, this one just looks like it's top level. If you needed to go a layer deeper, you would just declare it. So like here in, I'll walk you guys through this. We did this the other day, but currencies, if you wanted to get in and know the symbols and things, all you would have to do here is just declare a dictionary. Just do an NS dictionary and call it something like currency dictionary. And then you'd have to, you know, alloc and init, so it has that declared space to use. And then once you've got it declared, then you could go in and make something like, you know, let's say we want the symbol. Symbol would be, symbol would be currency dictionary and then symbol. That's how you would go in and get that information out. Does that make sense if you needed to go some layers deeper?
Yeah, will you leave that in there?
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
I'm not seeing, hold on, I'm not seeing, like you initialized it, but you didn't pull it out of the original dictionary.
You mean?
Oh, I see. Never mind.
Yeah, you're good.
Like,
You just,
but you would want to, that
this
doesn't
is
make
like
sense.
an array. I think this is actually an array. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's an array of a dictionary.
Yeah, so you'd probably have to go.
It's like multi-level deep.
Yeah, I don't love the way that that's structured because normally you'd probably just do a dictionary, but you would do something along those lines, and then if you knew that it wasn't working, I would just Google people trying to parse JSON, because if you were struggling trying to figure out how you wanted your JSON to be divvied up, you can type it into Google, and tons of people have used these APIs for practice before, and you would be able to figure it out. So I'll comment this out for you guys, so that we can use that a little bit later. So then NS number, population, and then now you just have to change your init method because it takes in 3 parameters now. So init with dictionary, whoops, that's the wrong one. Init with name, capital, and population. And then just in my table view, sorry if I'm going a little fast, guys. Just in my table view, I'm just going to set the text label to that. And then what you have to do here, actually, this brings up a good point. How do I turn this int into text, into a string? Because I can't use string interpolation, right?
You could do, yeah, bracket and then a space after it. Oh, I see what you're saying. I know there's usually like a int value or something.
It's like %, something.
Yeah, you can do, so there's a couple ways to go about it. I would say the best way to make sure you're getting the right thing is just do NS string with format.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can pass in %i. And it needs to be an Objective-C string. And then afterwards, you can type in the country's population. I think that should do it for us. There's only one way to find out. You know how to build fail. Let's find out what that is. country.population. Oh, maybe it is just a regular pointer type. Oh man, what's going on now? Oh, semicolons. That was so dumb. Okay. And there we go. So it really wasn't hard to get integer data. You know, we'd probably want to use a number formatter and do some commas and maybe be more intuitive and say like this many people, or write like population. And that's really easy too, right? If you wanted to come in and just say population and then just do that. I mean, it still kind of is string interpolation. It just looks a little bit different. That's all it is. So, I mean, some of them look kind of ugly, like the Micronesia one, can't really see. And then here's the final part for you guys, is I want you to be able to come in, and when you select a cell, have the rest of the information populate here. There are a couple of ways to go about it. I would say the best memory management way and the most speedy way is, rather than just doing one network call, I would do an additional network call here to at least get the flag to pop up. Because like a string, and well, I guess this is an int, but strings and ints don't take up a lot of time to download. But a flag is going to take up a little bit longer. So it might be in your best interest to do a separate networking method to get like the flag URL, turn the URL into data, turn the data into a UI image. There are plenty of ways to go about it. That's what I would recommend. But so far with the way that we've set everything up, how do you guys feel on a 1 to 3 about using hybrid project Objective-C and Swift like this? Nice. Because pretty much tomorrow, this is what you're going to be doing. Cool. Alrighty. So take a break, of course, but take the rest of the time until stand-up, and try to get the information that we've done so far. And then when you tap on a cell, have it pop up here. This isn't like an afternoon project where it's like do or die, but like, you know, it's going to be the most helpful if you do that. And then tomorrow will just be a breeze if that feels pretty natural and intuitive to you. Do you guys have any more questions about what we've done so far? Pretty good? Okay, awesome. I'll post this recording, even though it's just like a partial project. I still feel like it might be helpful to look back on. And then if I get time, I'll probably flesh out the rest so you at least have solution code for tonight. And that way you have something to reference for that. Josh, did you have something?
I was going to ask if you could commit and push right now.
You got it. Let me do that. Whoa, why can't I see it? There we go. There you go. I've got a couple of things to do before stand-up. And so if I don't finish it before then with you guys, because the solution code I made was just up until this point, but I will work on it tonight. And then if you end up not getting it to a point where everything's done, I'll try to finish it out, and that will be helpful for tomorrow. During stand-up meeting, I will be giving you guys the sprint challenge, because tomorrow is like, yes, it's a project, but it's also an assignment, and I'd rather you just kind of get some extra time to work on it, especially because tomorrow you're going to be doing your project proposals for your build week next week, and I'd rather you have more time to focus on that rather than be worried on the sprint challenge for longer. So a little bit of extra time to think about the sprint challenge. All right, you guys, I will leave you to it, and we'll see you back in about an hour and 15 for stand-up meeting.
Thanks, Mitchell.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one. See you in a while.
Thanks, Mitch.
Bye-bye.